I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Gallup office is in India. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on January 27th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, organizations, and teams around the world. If you have questions during the webcast, really the best way to do that is to join us live in our chat room. It's right below the main video window. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Google+, we'd invite you to come over to coaching.gallup.com/live to join us there as well. If you have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, we'd love to hear from you as well. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, or you can contact us via the contact page. There's a little contact section to fill in on the right-hand side of the page that you're on right now, and you can find that at coaching.gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just Gallup Strengths Center, all one word, for your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch this video with both streaming and now downloadable audio, and I was just mentioning that earlier. We have lots of this available for you to listen to on your phone, in the car, on the train, or in a plane, and you can download those. We have all that information over again on our coaching page, coaching.gallup.com. Pooja Luthra is our host today. She works as an advanced consultant with Gallup in Delhi. And Pooja, it's great to see you. I always look forward to this time of the month with you to hang out. Welcome to another Call to Coach.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. I look forward to this time too. Hi, everyone. A very, very happy New Year to all of you, and very warm welcome to the Indian edition of Gallup Call to Coach. Today we have with us Mr. Pradeep Dutt. He's an executive and leadership coach, also a certified Gallup Strengths coach, who was actually from the first batch that we certified almost around the same time last year in Mumbai. And it's been a year. It's hard to believe, but Pradeep, a very, very warm welcome. Pradeep is an executive and leadership coach. He has more than 30 years of experience in the area of coaching leaders on the art of being more mindful about their strengths, to be able to apply this in a variety of areas. I mean, when you talk about leadership, he speaks about, and very passionately so, about leaders going through transformational changes, going through career transitions, going through performance coaching, and all of that. And he's had a very, very rich experience in coaching leaders around it. So we hope to gain some more insight, particularly into leadership coaching, since I also know Pradeep has been using a variety of assessments, including the Strengths Finder, to go about doing this in a very, very effective manner. So Pradeep, a very, very warm welcome to Gallup.
Thank you, Pooja. I'm delighted to be here.
Great. So let's get started. You want to tell us a little bit about your journey as a strengths coach before we get into specifics of leadership coaching?
Right. So my journey into the strengths-based coaching started last year, and time has flown by. And prior to that, nearly for about 8-9 years, I had been into coaching using all variety of tools and variety of approaches. Positive psychology was something that I had heard about, I knew something about, but what to do in it, how to be strategic and more tactical how to use it, was something that was not known to me. And so last year, as I came into the first India Gallup program, ever since that, it's been a wonderful journey for me.
Great. So tell us a little bit about your top 5. How did that change things for you when you did you take your Strengths Finder just last year, or were you acquainted with it before that?
Well, I took it only last year. Yes.
Okay.
So my, there were some pieces of my own career journey as I had moved. I had taken jumps. I had moved from place A to place B. Sometimes not knowing why I was doing it, and I had gone to very strange places, all kinds of things I had done, and some of the dots were not joining up sometimes, and I was to wonder, is there something wrong with me? And so when I took the Strengths Finder, somehow suddenly the mist got lifted and I could see the connections getting formed. And my top 5 are learner, achiever, input, intellection, and relator. And especially, both as now as a consultant and as a coach. And I wanted to, link this top 5 with something that happened to me at age 10 at age 10, I went into a boarding school, and it's hard to believe 10-year-old boy kind of fighting with his parents to say, I want to go to a boarding school. And so my parents were very upset. They didn't want to send me, but I said, no, I just have to go there. And I later on, many years later, when I would think about it, I couldn't understand why would at age 10 I do such a radical thing, leave home, go into the boarding school. I was a very happy family, happy childhood. And now I kind of, as I connect my top themes, the whole thing of a learner and an input, which is about a learner being, being comfortable going into new situations, kind of comfortable with new set of rules being formed. And I can explain a couple of things that happened to me with these themes as they came about.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So tell us about pre-strengths days. So for example, you always, you said you're an early adapter of the idea of positive psychology, but of course it was put into a structured format only last year. So before that, tell us about your experience around coaching in the area of positive psychology and what did you do?
Right. So the change is hard. Change for anyone is hard. And especially as we come in as an executive coach to work with someone to help them move up the ladder or make some changes in their own behaviors. Largely it's about, so normally there are three things, which is valid information, which has to be on the table, uh, 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 um, considered choice, a person has to have the right choices made. And the third one is to be able to follow through on the commitments that one makes. And in any of these coaching conversations, the valid information would come either by a 360-degree feedback or some of the other assessment tools. And as one would start the coaching conversation with people, there would be a lot of questions that would come up, saying that this 360 probably is not right, the people haven't understood, there are some perceptions around it, they don't know, my intentions are very good, and blah, blah, blah. So it used to be a whole cycle. So a couple of sessions would go by just to kind of get a buy-in of people, get them to understand, and make the information valid in their own heads. Beginning from there, as I then started using the whole concept of positive psychology, initially through appreciative inquiry, that's what I originally started using with, which was to tap into what's good, what's been working, what's healthy, what's worked earlier, and how we can use it in the current context. So appreciative inquiry also brought in some elements of, the positive aspects, but yet the path wasn't that easy to go into it, working with a leader. And now when I finally got access to the Gallup-Strengths Finder and the very thorough coaching systems behind it, my life really has become a bit easy. The first few coaching sessions which I used to have, I used to come out pretty stressed out. They have become kind of fun to go in, and the fun being engaging the leader with not really what's not working, but engaging with what's right and what's invisible. And that's where the strengths come in. So as a coach using Gallup Strengths Finder, my own life has become pretty easy. And the couple of sessions that we have, people smile, laugh, reflect, at times also cry, because as the connections come up and maybe they didn't realize why things were happening. But we get off onto a very happy start into coaching.
Great. Pradeep, if you've spoken to so many coaches over the past 1 year, and one thing that always amazes me is the different applications of the idea of Strengths Finder that most coaches have done. So, be it from students to managers to individuals, and I don't recall having a very detailed conversation with anyone around leaders specifically. I know that's an area which is very intriguing for a lot of people, and the reason being that leaders do have specific needs, they do have specific demands that are off them from the system that they operate. So from that angle, even though the strengths based development is the same for most people, but with the application and what it means for them changes dramatically when you're in a leadership position also. So tell us a little bit about, coaching leaders basis this. Were there stated needs that leaders have, or do you go about, just that mindfulness and then creating that sort of a psyche, this is what more you can do, knowing who you are. What is the approach that you normally take? If you remember, we did the name claim aim. So how do you typically move about with the leader in this journey?
Right. So normally, as I get into my coaching conversations, I do tap into some orientation I've had on the neuroscience-based coaching and learning from neuroscience, which primarily says that no two brains think alike. And this is a very crucial element that I come into use, that even when I do have so there are cases where I begin without a Gallup report available. That's that's one possibility. And the second possibility is I get in, there is already a Gallup report which has been, assessment has been taken. So let's assume that the leader has taken a Gallup assessment and I get in there. So largely I use that whole thing of saying that no two brains think alike. So the talents and strengths as I have understood them might mean very differently to the person I'm coaching. And what I understand or know about talents and strengths mean nothing to the other person. It's the discovery that the other leader has to make in terms of talents and strengths, which are relevant to that person. So I normally go through an extensive exercise of helping the leader read their reports very carefully, go through them, and I kind of take them through a series of exercises of, which is the standard questions of what's worked in the past, what gives you your strengths, or what's really worked for you. And these people have come to senior levels because they're really good. They really perform. They really deliver. Because it's been so good, so invisible to them that sometimes talking about talents and strengths is much difficult than rather than talking about weaknesses. When we talk about weaknesses, people are kind of, they come up with ideas. Somebody's told them, they've heard something. But talents and strengths is kind of a new conversation. They haven't had it before. And that too about themselves, and that too about their previous, what's worked for them. So when I go into people who have taken the Gallup assessment, it's largely to help them understand what these themes are and how these themes contain the strengths and how they are playing out. Let me share with you one example where, as I began to work with this leader, the 360 report had come out, which largely said that this leader was exhibiting behaviors which others felt there was a solo, kind of to go solo, some amount of selfishness that the others were seeing in this particular leader. The leader was also kind of overriding others when it came to making decisions or information. And another feedback which had come was this leader is never satisfied. Howsoever best you do for this leader, the leader is never satisfied. And the fourth being that working with this leader is always confusing as things keep changing. So as I first had the 360 feedback, I presented the 360 feedback to this leader, and the standard answers came by saying, I've been misunderstood, these people are new, they don't understand the stress I'm in, etc., etc. And then we had this Gallup's strengths assessment done, and the themes that came out were futuristic, strategic, achiever, focus, and restorative. These were the key themes. And as I started now kind of the journey of discovery with this leader of what's this theme on the inside, which is about I am dash, or what's this theme on the outside, what others might see, which is I will. And also things like what I bring onto the table and what I need and what I don't. As a theme, what is the things that I hate, which if they were in the environment, I would be getting upset about. So as we did this exercise, I have opened in my laptop and I'm just reading it out from there. As we looked at these themes, and this leader was pretty successful, like he had produced some fabulous results. As we now did this exercise, this was, I think, the third session, and now the leader is himself talking that this theme, when not understood by others or when it's not been or the distortion is taking place, or when others don't know what this leader is doing. So in the futuristic he wrote, he said, others might misunderstand this theme as that he does not trust. He does not take others' opinions. Strategic. This guy is confusing, and this is a shortcut guy. His own assessment saying on an achiever that, he's such an achiever-oriented, he is snobbish, very selfish, overriding others. And with focus, he himself discovered the distortion as never satisfied. And in restorative, it was about this guy's kind of unapologetic kind of a thing. So here it was, initially I had been struggling to bring these items onto the table, and here the leader using the Gallup Strengths Finder and going through a very structured step-by-step process, having the patience to both understand and also reflect on the things, came out with nearly identical. And because we were doing it on the third day, the leader had kind of forgotten what was on the first day in 360. And as these things emerged, I placed before the leader the 360 report and the Gallup Strengths Finder, the assessment that he had done, the table he had made. And this was a huge aha moment for this person. And after that, we kind of never looked back. So after that, it was never about working about what's not there. It's about fine-tuning what's already there with us.
Excellent example, Pradeep. Thank you so much. I think the 2 or 3 points that I was sort of noting down as you were talking is one, of course, you brought out the point of the balconies versus basements, which is when you look at what others think of you. Mostly it's because of you using your talents in a manner that people tend to perceive them in a way. If they're not at the mature end of the spectrum, then chances are you would hear things which are negatively associated with the talent as opposed to the benefit of the talent. So that is the one thing. And the second thing that sort of came to my mind, and I've gone through this experience with leaders especially before, is the fact that when you hear such feedback, when you hear things, because you've been doing it for so long, like you said, you've been a performer, you've achieved a lot of things, but because you've been doing it for so long, you either tend to say that people don't get it, so they don't really know what sort of pressure I am in, just like this guy did. The second thing is they get it and they say, this is who I am, I can't change. So either which ways, in both circumstances, a leader is of the bent of mind that I have achieved what I wanted to achieve, so I'm successful in that sense of the word. So either of these two scenarios, whether people get it or they don't, or whether I know that this is who I am, either which ways, you take the responsibility of yourself to do anything about it. And the reason you don't want to take that responsibility is because you feel you will have to become somebody who you are not. Now here is where, when the Gallup approach comes in, it becomes one of a very empowering feeling, because here you're not telling the person to be who they are not. You're telling them, this is who you are. We just want you to use it better. That's all. So I think that's a thought that sort of crossed my mind, and I thought that you really brought the point home. So thank you for that. So this was around the the transformational coaching that you and I were talking about before that. So tell us some more examples where it was where you probably would have seen things around maybe a career transition or performance management issues that come up. Anything that helped leaders bridge that sort of a gap also? I mean, everybody doesn't have a transformational experience. Some people have tactical experiences. So from that angle.
Yeah. So this is a case about for a career transition coaching that I was into, and this was a senior leader heading sales and a marketing function in India of a US-based multinational corporation. And this particular leader had been on maternity leave. And as the leader returned from maternity leave, there were some issues, and this leader was asked to leave the organization. And very successful, smart, high achiever person. And as the first time when I met this leader, she was absolutely in tears, and her life had just kind of crashed somewhere. And we began on the journey of now kind of working to get this leader back onto the track and getting back onto the career graph, on the career that she wanted to be on. And as I had that initial conversations, one of the things that emerged was I was told, she said, Pradeep, when I go for a job interview, I'm not so confident. And she said, I'm good. I know I'm good. A number of times I don't get hired in the first round. The people say, Madam, you're very, very nice, you're good, but we will just wait for some other time. They wanted a little more time. So she wouldn't, and there would always, what would happen in a couple of instances was that a month or 2 months down the later, the organization where she had gone for the interview wasn't able to find another good candidate, and she was then brought in. At least 2-3 incidences had similar things had happened, and now it was that a job had gone out from her. What we then did was we brought the Gallup's Strength Finder assessment, and we started working on discovering what the talents were, how they had been playing out. We did a good amount of storyboarding, for each of the things. We would sit for a couple of hours, go back into the life, see how those things had played out, how in the previous roles the successes had come using those talents and strengths. So in about 2 coaching sessions, we had built a very good picture of this person, which was visible to her. And now, after she had done that, she then started going for these job interviews. And in job interviews, a question that's often asked is, tell me something about yourself. And this question seems very innocuous and very easy, but it's one of the most difficult questions to answer. Tell me something about yourself. And in the earlier cases, what would happen is that the entire energy gets into explaining to someone, who am I? What can you expect from me? But after we had done this exercise for this particular leader, it was a cakewalk. And right in the first 10 minutes of that interview, she would be talking absolutely personal stuff, things that had worked, things that had overworked, which is a weakness, or which was not going right, and things which are underworked, where she had to invest in. And after we had done this exercise, and she was into this into the job interviews, finally one day we sat together, and this was after about, I think, 2 months that we had been working on this assignment. And we now had a huge challenge in front of us as we sat down. This lady had 4 job options. Each job option, one superior to the other. She was absolutely bubbling with energy. She knew who she was. She could answer. She could explain what she wanted to do. And so the story ended with her getting a job which was 1.5 times the salary that she had been drawing, into an international position. And she said, this is the first time I have been at a job interview not worrying about who am I, because I know who am I. I'm worrying about this person I know, how this person is capable of delivering what the organization needs. So that's a career transition story that I think really resonates for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. When you were talking, it got me curious, Pradeep, that when you're doing the coaching for leaders, one thing is, of course, you talk about being mindful about your strengths, and suddenly you have an aha moment in which you can see how things add up to a current situation or challenge that you're facing, such as this person that you're talking about. When it comes to, let's say, coaching somebody around performance, let's say, talking to a person about what are they doing, how can they do better, maybe they're in a comfort zone, maybe they're in a situation in which they feel that they've plateaued in their career, whatever those things would be. Do you find merit, or comparatively speaking, do you find more merit in the mindfulness approach, that be mindful about what you're doing and sort of incorporate that in your behavior? Or when it comes to aiming, do you actually go the route of, okay, let's just aim and then have concrete steps to sort of achieve that aim? The two are different in the sense that one is more about general behavior and sort of, being mindful about whatever it is that you're doing. And the second is more specific towards a particular goal or objective. So I'm not sure which one in your experience has turned out to be more effective from a leader's perspective.
Right. So I think as I get into a coaching engagement, it depends what. So coaching for a high performer, or for a person who's doing exceedingly well, and our coach has been brought in to further sharpen the practice of this particular leader, then it's about what the tasks are, and really helping the leader kind of become very strategic. So normally I have an exercise with saying 3 p.m., whatever the task that you're doing, pull out your top 5, keep them on the table in front of you, and begin to target what the challenge is. So kind of getting the leader to consciously, for a particular task, begin to use it. The other piece is about, especially with senior leaders, heading the organization or one level below. I very frequently use the Gallup's Global Engagement Survey, which shows that, largely for, only 20 to 30% of employees in an organization are engaged. And if that be the case, look at the economic loss that is taking place. And I normally open that report, and the figure for India is at 9%. And Gallup's report says it's at 9% for the engagement in India. So I really get the leader interested in saying, do you want a greater engagement? Do you want a greater productivity of your team? And then I come down to the point saying, teams are disengaged. The 70% reason for teams getting disengaged is the leader himself or herself. So in some ways, helping the leader take ownership, saying, and the leader says, then what do I need to do? And then it comes to saying, first, get to know about your own talents and strengths, get to understand this philosophy of talents and strengths, and first, having done these two things, now say begin to apply them in a very regular, consistent manner. And there, as I get into my coaching, every time my coaching begins, I normally ask the leader, I say, what was the Fosbury flop? What was the Fosbury flop moment in your last 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Fosbury flop I used from Dick Fosbury was a high jumper who changed the game in the Mexico Olympics. He changed the game. Earlier, everybody would come and jump over the bar, facing the bar. They would jump up. And Dick Fosbury, what he did was he changed the game. That you show your back to the bar and you go back up. So normally I ask the leader saying, in the last 2 weeks, what was the Fosbury moment, Fosbury flop that you had in the last 2 weeks? So kind of getting them, I would say tease them, challenge them to say, where was the success in the last 2 weeks from your own talents and strengths? Initially, I get very poor answers or people haven't noticed really. It's when people get conscious about it and begin to really see how things are going, they begin to get those not only ahas, but it's what's working for other people. So with that, I find that the performance suddenly takes a big jump for them.
So typically, Pradeep, in your experience, and I'm asking this question because you have a rich experience around this, from the time that you said that people are not really aware or they may not have seen how things that happen to them are tied to their talents, to the time when they can actually claim them and see how they can help, how these talents can actually help them going forward, what do you think normally is that time period? I mean, how long do you end up spending with a leader to get him from that level to this?
Right. So the leaders, all senior leaders are smart and they are intelligent and they understand very quickly. So I often get this answer saying, I've understood. I know I've understood. And my standard phrase is, I don't care if you understand, because it's the head which understands, but it's the body which learns. And having just understood what talents and strengths are mean nothing to me as a coach. It's about, has the body understood? Has it gone in your behaviors, in your own behaviors, and as you behave with others, with what they notice? So I think there it is a struggle, because people feel understood, I know what they are, and when it comes to stressful situations, there's a tendency to go back to some of those elements which had been causing them trouble. So yes, it's a tough call, and it is. As a coach, I have to be consistent and I have to help the leader become consistent around it, saying, understanding is not what I'm looking for. It's about, are they in play? And can others say they are in play? And there what I normally encourage my leaders I coach is to say, can you build a user's manual? Can you build your own user's manual saying, these are my top 5. This is how my top 5s operate. This is what I prefer doing. And say, can you hand over these user manual to your at least 2, 3 key people whom you work? So it's in some ways holding them accountable for what they think they've understood. And having those conversations with the leader and with the direct reports, or with the leader and the boss, now the things begin to change, because in some way it's also a culture change for the leaders that I work with.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that thought. I mean, getting them from cognitive understanding to almost spiritual understanding of the talents. And spiritual, I mean, in the sense what you talk about, the body learning and the behavior, etc. So it's a more holistic understanding of the idea rather than just the cognitive understanding. Because you're right, most of these guys are smart. That's why they are where they are. So it's not about cognitive understanding at all, beyond a point. So great example there. Jim, anything from the chat room yet?
No, unfortunately, we've been having our own conversation there. I'm sorry about that, but we were talking a little bit about group exercises. Maybe we can, pitch that to you, Pradeep. We were talking a little bit about when you're talking about strengths discovery in the midst of groups. What have you done that has been successful in light of that? What have you done that's gotten people motivated and moving in groups around strengths discovery?
Right, so this is about a particular organization, and the senior leadership team was about 10, 12 people, and they had taken the Gallup assessment. The senior leader had heard about it somewhere, and in conversations, he kind of encouraged everyone else to take it. And the first time that we met, everybody had their reports out, and now the first step there we took in the groups was to really get them involved into the whole concept of that it's a belief system there, saying what's missing versus what's there. And often what I use the movie Rudy. The first time I came across the movie Rudy was in the book StrengthsFinder. And in the StrengthsFinder book, there is a small story given about the movie Rudy, how Rudy tries to become a player he wants to be. He tries and tries very hard, does everything, but yet is not there. So at times I encourage the senior leadership team to watch the movie Rudy and discuss what's going on. And then come down to the theme saying, we cannot be anybody we want to be, but we can certainly be a whole lot more of who we already are. And once that philosophical thought process is linked in saying, okay, if you want to be more, this is what is playing out for you. And it's initial exercises are pretty much kind of a school student kind. Everybody had their reports, they got highlighters and they got pencils, and they are highlighting and they are putting it out, and then having kind of discovered their own elements, what's working for them. It's in groups to then say, what do others see? Do others see what I see? And in this particular group that we began to work, one of the person I'll also open my report here. That will give me a little more connection. Right. So there was this a senior person heading the finance, and this particular person in the finance was, everybody had been having problems with this particular person. But as this whole dialogue started about talking about it, and then what we often do is we take theme by theme, and I encourage, so in a group what they would do is each of these people, with whatever understanding they have picked up, they would make a small write-up for themselves saying, this is how my themes play out, this is what you would see me doing, and if you see me doing these things, this is what is driving. So with their own understanding, they prepare a small write-up, and then this write-up is shared amongst team members. And then one by one, I had these team members come up and present who they were from the strengths perspective. And as that came up, and now the group would then get into a very healthy discussion of how these strengths have been playing and what this leader could do to further sharpen these strengths. So it's a 2-3 hour conversation. There are multiple conversations. And kind of the cycle begins, everybody begins to understand what those themes are. And as we are doing it, there are some things that I have to be really, really cautious about, because in the beginning, people begin to label other people with their themes. If somebody's theme is woo, somebody might just say, as if this person isn't serious about it. So as a coach, when I'm sitting in that group, I have to be pretty, what should I say? I have to call the rules saying, these themes, all themes are equally nice, and that we can't label people because of themes. It's about how those themes are being played out. And as these things go out, then there is a common vocabulary that gets built in. So even when they are having their own, the senior leadership team begins to have their own strategic meetings, and you notice that somebody is quote unquote irritating you or doing not so nice, they all have their theme cards or their theme things, and they also by then have got educated on to what's the basement and the balcony operation of a theme looks like. And instead of saying that this is a weakness, it's in a joking manner, one would say that, well, it's a deliberative theme which is really taking long to make a decision, whereas the client on the other side is really waiting for a decision, and people can laugh about it and get the things done. But even as I say that, I think it takes quite a lot of time to get people to believe in the system and process. And often when I started to senior leadership groups, the next step is, let's take it to our teams. While it seems very interesting and easy to take it to the teams, what I have noticed is, if leaders haven't practiced it well and they don't believe in it and they don't walk the talk, as they go with these talents and strengths into their teams, if the team notices that the leader says one thing and does another, the belief in the strengths approach totally erodes. And that's a huge danger I normally have to kind of protect against, saying, let the top team begin to understand, let their bodies understand what's going on, and then only take it down the team. I've also seen a number of, please, Pooja.
No, go ahead, Pradeep, go ahead.
So I've seen a number of times where there were conflicts earlier, or misunderstandings earlier, or a sense of disengagement. It quickly changes around to something which is positive. People are looking at what's working with people, and they're laughing and joking about things which would otherwise irritate them and make them go mad. Pooja.
Yeah, so no, you're absolutely right, Pradeep. I think the one thing that the strengths-based approach demands of leaders or managers or whoever intends to go that route is time. So, hoping that you have one session with a coach in which you learn about talents and strengths and then behold everything would change is not being realistic, because that's just the cognitive part of it. In order to be able to holistically apply it in your behavior, you do need touch points, you do need time, and that's how it will get transformed into action. So a lot of times, even to us, leaders come with saying that, okay, end of the session, we'll put an action plan in place. The idea is not about documenting tactical action plans. The idea is to see how you can incorporate that in your behavior, and that will happen when you're consciously able to do it over time. So our job there is to tell them how to consciously do that. So when you say you face that challenge, it's a challenge that I think all of us do go through, because it is something which is not just like that. It's not like a project done and cost saved, that sort of a thing. So it has its gestation period. So by that logic, it's a little bit tough, yeah.
Pradeep, I like the way you emphasized your active coaching in the groups during these exercises, because I think sometimes it's easy to turn these group exercises, let them go, and then you kind of back away, and you can tend to be inactive in it. And I appreciated the emphasis on active coaching even while these are going on, stepping into conversations. Getting in there, mixing some things up. I imagine if the group, you have a group of 12, that's pretty manageable in that kind of setting. If it was 40, would you break those down? Would you do the similar exercises, just break them down into smaller units, or do you think you could pull something off like that with a group of 40?
With a group of 40, I was working at one place where I had about 34 people. And here it became difficult because two things, one, it was a kind of a cross-cultural environment, so understanding of things were different, and two, as groups were coming in, from just managing them by their own was difficult. So there I had to what I did was I kind of picked out 2-3 people who had been taking more interest in the Gallup Strengths Finder approach, and I spent some time individually with them outside those meetings and got them kind of ready up in some ways. And as I then went in to engage with these 34 people, I had these 3 people who were there at different tables working with them to accelerate the whole process. But yes, it does become a little difficult in there.
That's great advice. Find those that are already excited about it and engaged. Use them to your advantage. So that's great advice. Pooja?
Yeah, that's all that I had, Jim,
Okay.
for Pradeep.
All right, Pradeep, anything as we kind of bring this in for a close, any final thoughts that you might have around what you talked about today?
I think the final thoughts are our talents and strengths are so invisible. They've really served us. And what's really invisible and what served me extremely well, I have no way of knowing it. And getting to know it can be a real discovery. A real discovery, and also in some ways what's really worked in the past may not work in the future. So be ready to face some surprising moments of wanting to face some dysfunctional behaviors coming largely from our talents and strengths.
That's great advice. With that, we'll call it a wrap here. I want to thank you, Pradeep, for coming out today to be a part of this and coming into the office to do it. It's always good to hear from our coaches that are out in the field, and so we want to say thanks for all that you've done in the last year. Excited to hear about what you've done, and thanks again for being on the program. I also want to remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available. If maybe you're watching this for the first time and you're like, where do I get this strengths goodness? That would be a great question to have. You can head out to the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. If you have questions, and you might have questions, that would be all right. We'd love to field them for you. You can send those questions to us, coaching@Gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all the other past ones we've done out, and including links to our Facebook page and our YouTube group that's out there. Very vibrant. All the YouTube stuff is free, by the way, and all the Facebook stuff is as well. And great, we have some 3,000 people engaged in this conversation on Facebook. We'd love to have you out there. Maybe have a conversation around the world. That would be pretty cool, right? Facebook we would just be talking around the United States and then Europe, and then it would move into Russia, and then it would come to China and India, go to Japan and Australia, and then back into the United States. So we can do that on our Facebook group. All the links are out there at the coaches blog. That's just coaching.gallup.com. We also have meetups going on around the world, some 17 here in the United States, plus 3 international. Singapore. I was going to, as soon as I started that, I thought, I'm not going to remember. Singapore, Philippines, and it'll come to me here in just a second, but we have all kinds of meetups. If you can't remember where they're at, again, head out to the coaches blog, and there's a meetup page out there. We'd love to get them started all around the world. In fact, we were talking in chat during the program a little bit about maybe getting some meetups started in India. So it'd be great to get some local meetups going on. Really, those are just little strengths gatherings of both coaches and strengths enthusiasts. We'd love to have you guys get together and just talk about strengths on a weekly, monthly basis, whatever. Not a lot of rules around those. Just getting together, maybe a cup of tea, and enjoy some time together talking about strengths. If you have questions about that, again, let us know. We'd love to facilitate those and get them going. We have apps now available for both the iPhone and Android. If you use either one of those phones and you can't remember what your top 5 are, we now have an application that you can log into. And I encourage you to take a screenshot of it and make it your lock screen so you have to look at it every time you unlock your phone. How cool would that be, right? You would never forget what your top 5 are when you're doing it that way as well. We want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this, we're going to ask you to share it. It would be great to just share that with a friend, maybe someone who's thinking about taking StrengthsFinder. Share this program with them, and with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.